and welcome back to the Dreamcast. I am your host, Denise Walsh. I combine science, scripture, and stories that will inspire you to dive deep, break through your own personal glass ceiling, and design a life of your dreams. Are you overworked, overstressed, and overwhelmed? You want life to be different, but you don't even know how to get there. Man, oh man, I lived there myself. And in my experience with working with thousands of people from all walks of life, there is one simple thing that holds so many of us back: a lack of time management. We may know what we want, but we often don't know how to get there and don't feel like we can add one more thing into our already busy day. And that's exactly why I created the Dream Life Action Planner. It's a 90-day inspired game plan that will give you total clarity on your greatest priorities and skyrocket your productivity on the tasks that matter most. And now, for a limited time, you can get your own copy for free. And when you go to denisewalsh.com/action. Denise Walsh, Denisewalsh.com/action, ACTION. Put your information in and we will send this action planner directly to your inbox so you can set your goals, reprioritize your calendar, and design your dream life today. Big welcome back to the Dreamcast. I am super excited for our next guest, and I know that you are going to leave this episode changed. Our next guest is a best-selling author in personal finance and money thinking. Okay, we all need that, right? He's the host of Transformation Nation podcast and is the owner of 30 plus companies and the founder of his own martial art, Yokido. So what I love about the story is that he rejects regret. I'm going to say that one more time. He rejects regret and he speaks to it as the ultimate life failure. And we're going to talk a ton about that today. And he has a unique approach to living a fulfilled life by breaking rules, making mistakes, and just moving faster than the competition. That's his key to success. And he's playing by a different set of rules, which is why he bought his first rental house with a visa. And that snowballed into owning 150 rental houses in 7 states in less than 5 years. Guys, so much is possible when we think outside the box. Yet in 2008, he lost the entire $20 million, but then was able to recreate his wealth and reinvented his life over a 4-year transformation. And today he leads 3 global companies with one unified mission: to free people from money bondage. Oh my gosh, I am so excited to learn from this entrepreneur. So big Dreamcast welcome to Damion Lupo.
What's going on? I'm so happy to be here, Denise. Thanks for having me.
Oh my gosh. Well, I'm really excited to dig into your story because we know every single time you try something new, you learn something in the process. So tell us a little bit about when you decided to start your first company. When did you really decide to break out of the box and do something different?
When I was 11, I was told that we didn't have any money, that we were broke. And basically it was no, you can't have a Nintendo game because we can't even figure out how to pay for the house payment. And I said, that doesn't work. I'm 11. I want to play video games. And so I went out and figured out how to buy games in bulk from people that were selling. They were bored, kids, like 12-year-olds. And then I would sell them off one at a time after I'd played them. So I just solved a problem. It happened to be my video game need, but I was just solving a problem. That was my first business. It was wholesale retail. And I hired my parents to drive me around up in Alaska. And you know what? There's problems in every direction if you just open your eyes. It's not really, I think we're kind of, we screw this thing up because everybody watched The Secret and we think it's about the law of attraction. We're missing the law of awareness. The law of awareness, if you just look to your left and right, all these opportunities and problems are sitting there. And if you go solve them, all the wealth and all the freedom you ever wanted is just waiting for you. And that was the beginning of that back when I was 11. So it's been a long time.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So that entrepreneur seed. And again, you're like, okay, this is what I want. How do I go get it? And instead of waiting for your parents or waiting for Christmas or waiting for a birthday or like for somebody to give it to you, you went out and went to make it happen. I think that in itself is something that a lot of people don't do.
No, they're waiting. It's like I hammer on this because I want people to really understand you can't sit there and just will a bag of money to fall from the sky and hit you in the head. Like that's not how it works. The bag of the money is literally in front of you or off to the left and right. You have to open your eyes. And you can wait until Christmas. But the problem is only one Nintendo game is going to show up. I wanted to play 25 games. And maybe that was my little greedy butt saying I want more. But hey, that's what I wanted. And I went and created it. And that's what we all have the potential for, is to go create it if we're willing to get off our butts.
Okay, so you had to do a lot of work. You had to, number one, see the opportunities, but number two, go do the work. Tell me about one of the first companies that was a massive success for you.
Gosh, massive success is a prelude to a massive disaster when you think that you're so smart. Like when I was doing my real estate stuff, it was that was the biggest success, if you will, before it was the biggest disaster, before it was the biggest learning opportunity. And there is this cycle where oftentimes it's our ego that creates the disaster because we stop listening, we stop paying attention to the feedback, and there's this feedback that we constantly get if we're on the wrong path, and sometimes when we're on the right path. If we're on the right path, it feels like flow, like this is it's almost too easy. That's because the universe is opening things up. And if you're just getting hammered constantly, at some point, it's not about being tenacious. It's about getting off the damn tracks. Like you need to move to a different space and do something different. But sometimes it's just the struggle that's giving you the muscle. It's like if you're at the gym, it's hard to curl that weight. It's hard to do the effort. But then you end up with this muscle and wow, now you can do whatever you want. So the real estate was the big one. And when I blew that up, it was because I thought I was the smartest, most invincible, bulletproof person on the planet. And the universe said, you're an idiot. And we're going to give you an opportunity to learn something by taking it all away. And so that was my process of going from 0 to 20 million to negative 5 million. It's a hell of a roller coaster.
Oh my gosh, I can imagine. They're like, what do I need to learn in this experience? The emotional ups and downs in business ownership is you've got to have that vision in front of you and kind of know where you're going. But things change and you also have to be flexible, and keeping your eyes open is a big part of that. So you lost it, okay, but then you recreated it again. Tell me a little bit about that journey.
Here's the thing that I thought wealth was all the money. And so I said, okay, I'm going after $1 million, and I made my million. And then I said, I'm going to go after 2 because then I'm a multimillionaire. So I got my 2, and then I said 3, and then it was like, okay, 10. And so on the way to 10, I hit 5, and then in net worth, and then went negative 5 million. What I realized after losing all of this money and having to start over, that the reason can't just be the cash, and the freedom is not the cash. The freedom is not the cash flow. I mean, I had hundreds of thousands in cash flow, and it all went away. And what dawned on me was that the confidence in doing this stuff was the true freedom, and the actual activity had to be driven by something more than just more. It had to be driven by a mission. It had to be driven by values so I knew who I was. Like, how do you decide what you're going to do? How do you decide who you're going to do business with if you don't know who you are based on values? That's the filter. If you want to understand how to say no to the wrong people in your life, figure out what your values are. And because I know what my values are that drive everything. And if you violate my values are self-responsibility being number 1, and 10x thinking, and candor, and transparency, and growth. If you violate those things, you're not going to be in my life. Like if you are a naysayer, pessimistic, you think 1x, you're thinking about the past, like high school was your best moments and everything else is crap, you're not going to get through anywhere near me because you violate my values. I didn't have any values back then. My value was more. And so everybody got to play with Damion. It was like a big disaster waiting to happen. Values have to start what you're doing. If you don't have those, you're setting yourself up for a big old mess.
I really love that. Values really can be, that's the anchor point to which we do business and to which we do life. And a lot of times you're right. We are just too busy in the hamster wheel, or we're just, overwhelmed. We don't sit back to say, okay, who am I and what is important to me? Did it take like getting everything taken away for you to go through that step?
Yeah, I needed that. The universe gave me a gift. And at the time I was pissed. I was like, hey, this is lame. And I was a victim. And then at some point, there was a point where I was working with a therapist, and I was doing some work in Texas about, I remember a few months in, and this guy looked at me and he said something that kind of brought me to my knees. He looked at me and he goes, yeah, I don't trust you. And I said, holy moly. And I realized it's because I wasn't trustworthy. It was because I was a mess. And about a year later, after we asked one question for a solid year, the question was, what is true? I peeled back enough layers into my soul and figured out who I really was. And it wasn't just this surface level person that wanted to have another Ferrari. It was actually a person that wanted to teach and wanted to share myself and wanted to have an impact. Like those really mattered at a deep level. We got to that point and it was fascinating. One day I said, hey, I didn't bring my wallet. Can I pay you next week? And he said, of course, I trust you. And it was the shift. It was all the work that I'd done. And that was the shift. And I went, whoa. And I didn't recognize the guy that had started that work because all of the pain that I'd gone through to go to my soul. And that's the work that we have to do if we really want to get to the truth.
I'm going to say that again. What is true? What is true? What is true? Because so many times we're stuck in our heads and we're going down these rabbit trails and we make things up and we create sometimes our own chaos. And the question of what is true can really get you back to what's important, what's true for you, your values. And then you can be authentic because you know who you are.
Yeah, it is where we have to go. The problem is we don't know how to go there because we haven't gone there before. And this is where you really need people in your life, whether it's a therapist or a coach or a mentor that will ask the right questions. None of these people has the answer. I guarantee you the answer is inside you. For every one of us, there is no exception. We have answers inside that are just begging to get out if we open the space, but we don't know how to open the space because we don't have the key. And the key is the question.
Oh my gosh. I'm taking so many notes. So I agree. I mean, when they always say that the best counselors don't have all the answers, they just ask really good questions because it's up to us to do the work, to be empowered, to say what our truth and to become in alignment and all of that kind of stuff. And so in your book, The Ultimate Guide to Reinventing Your Life, you have a crystal clear step-by-step roadmap for your reinvention. Can you tell me a little bit about what you did next once you kind of went through this work? What is this roadmap?
So the roadmap, the book is really set up for internal, external transformation. And it starts internally. It starts with getting clear on some of the stuff we've talked about with the values, understanding who you are by creating silence and really just sitting still. We are really bad at sitting still. Like we are so good at chasing and being frenetic squirrels, chasing a bunch of like shiny nuts that are all over the place. It's out of control and it's exhausting. We're burning out our adrenals and everything. And so it helps us to sit still and get clear. And then once we do that, we can start looking outward because really, if you look outward, that's a reflection of our internal being. And if you start working on the external versus getting clear on the internal first, you're going to be doing it in the wrong order. And that's what this book is all about. It's about reinventing from inside out versus external. People say, well, I'm going to go to the gym and I'm going to have a great body and that's going to fix everything. Not if you believe that you're a fatty. If that's who you think you are and that you're not worthy of being in shape and being mobile and energy, full of energy, it doesn't matter. You're going to find excuses. You're going to lift half the weight that you should. You're never going to show up for the class. So you've got to start off with the internal reinvention. And that's the book is broken into sections with questions because your reinvention is a very personal thing for you. And you've got those answers. And the job that Chris and I had was to figure out what questions to ask based on our experience of asking those questions and getting help from other people and then consolidating it into that roadmap where you could take yourself from, I don't know if I like this life to, I want the different life and I need to turn myself upside down and inside out.
I love that. My psychologist in me is like, yes, because you're right. It's asking those good questions. It's taking people on a journey that they want to go on, but they just don't know how. And so this book really offers that journey in a linear way that will allow for that full-blown transformation.
There's another piece to that it makes it pretty different. When Chris and I are both number geeks. And so when we wrote this thing, we really got into the numbers. I think there's a lot of really interesting books that are out there in terms of personal development, but they don't have a numbers slant. And the problem is, if you think about the world, it's money and money drives us and money is it's the mode of commerce and connection and exchange. And if you don't have that stuff right, if you're not clear on what is going on with your money, you're basically set up for a disaster. I mean, I have a lot of people that are beautiful, lovely people that don't have a clue about what's going on with their financial life. And they're just doomed because it's always going to be a mess. They're always going to wonder why the abundance isn't right. So this book goes deep into the numbers, asking questions about not only you and your values, but really what's going on with your numbers. And like, hey, what happened on your credit card statement last month? a year ago, where were you and where are you at now? Are you better or worse? What's the trajectory of where you're going? I can tell you where you're going in 5 years. I'll just look back a year and I'll show you the chart. It's very clear, but we don't do that work because most people don't have the training and they don't know somebody that does. That's what this book is about. It's getting to the numbers, the root, the cause, the core.
And that really connects with people because they want to see on paper. Sometimes it can really be that black and white, even though self-transformation can be a fluid and colorful and there's so many options and kind of a heady type thing. This is a black and white. Like you can really see where somebody can go based on where they've been. And I think even creating a space for people to do that reflection and create and like take a look at their life in that way will be really eye-opening.
It's terrifying.
Yeah, it is.
It's eye-opening. Here's the great thing. You can't change a lie. And if you don't look at your numbers, you're going to be trying to change a lie because you're telling yourself one thing. I know when somebody is ready to transform because they're willing to start sharing all their numbers with me. If they won't share their numbers, I've had people try to tell me my business is good, everything is great, and I'm a little frustrated. And I go, okay, how much cash do you have in the bank? They're like, no, you're not paying attention. I had this conversation in Europe with a guy. He was so pissed at me, went up and told his wife, I don't like that guy. I just met him. I don't like him. And then he realized, oh, yeah, maybe I should try to look at things a little differently because I don't have any cash in the bank. And why is that? It's the core question. If you just have this business that is profitable, yeah, that's great. It's called ego, the top line on your business. Like how much money is coming in? Well, if none of that's actually going to your bank account or your pocket, who cares? You're not all Snapchat. You actually have to have profits and things that will feed you. And people ignore that. They wonder why they're so frustrated and they want to quit their business because you have to actually look at the real numbers, not just the ego.
Well, and there's an underlying anxiety, no matter how much you try to tell yourself differently, that happens when you know that either you're not being authentic and you're kind of projecting something that's not quite true, or, you just don't sleep as well at night when you've got credit cards and all of this debt. And do you think that people need a trigger event? Like, do they need to hit rock bottom before they make a big change?
Well, here's the thing. Yes. And the trigger event can be as fast as you saying what is true and then acknowledging what you see in the mirror. That it doesn't, like in my case, I had 4 IRS agents knocking at my door and it scared the living crap out of me. The crazy part, after I hid for 2 hours in the closet, I went out and there was a notice and it was actually from the IRS for the lady that lived in the house before me. It wasn't even for me, but it was the trigger event that showed me I was in so much fear and I was such a mess. I was honest. I mean, it was going to kill me eventually.
Oh my God. The IRS shows up at your house, right?
My house.
Which that never happens. And It's not even for you, but yet because of the situation you were in, you thought it was.
It was for me.
Crazy.
Even though that thing was addressed to somebody, it was for me.
That's amazing.
They were just they were the messengers from the universe. They were 4 armed agents. And I went, it's like a siege at my house, but it was really because I needed something. And so it was going to be that, or it was going to be something else. Here's the thing though, if you don't pay attention to those signals, those messages, they get bigger, they get more painful. Eventually that bat that's hitting you is going to be a freight train that drives over you. So you've got to pay attention. And if you ignore this stuff, the universe will get through to you eventually. So the question is, do you want the little pain and learn, or do you want the big pain and have it take you out of commission? I needed apparently like a 747 to crash through me.
But at least it wasn't really for you. That's crazy. And I would not wish that on anyone. You just need to take a time where you're saying, it's not okay to be here anymore. Like, I'm so done with being here. And your book will give them the roadmap for that change. And so you also talk about a technique for going conscious. I want to know, what does going conscious mean to you? And then how do we immediately get ourselves there?
I think consciousness is a state of truth, and it's different levels, different layers, and how far you go into the truth. And the truth is your own conscious understanding of yourself, your being. It's also being connected to other people and everything around us. So that question that came up earlier, what is true, is the fastest way to go into consciousness because it's real. The thing that we miss is that if we're not in the truth, we're not in integrity. Integrity is the alignment between our thoughts and our activities and our deep values and beliefs. And if we're saying one thing and we're doing something else and we believe something else, we've got this whole mess of integrity. And so we've got to start with getting to the truth and pushing those into alignment. So if you deeply believe that X, that you're poor, if you've got that belief system as a child, if you don't address that, I don't care how much money you make, you will get rid of it. because your body, your spiritual being, if you will, is naturally going to want to go towards alignment. And when you feel anxious about something you're doing, it doesn't feel quite right. It's because there's a piece of you that knows it isn't right. You've got to find how you align those things, or you're never going to be free, and you're sure as heck not going to be at peace.
So understanding those deep-seated beliefs and then asking the question, what is true, can help to I don't want to say reprogram, but like a little bit like readjust, because a lot of times we were given those beliefs as children or we adopted them, but we don't have to choose them now that we're all adults. And so you can edit, change, decide what beliefs are deep in your core, but it does start with saying what's true.
What's true? There is a choice as an adult. As a child, you absorb and you take on beliefs of other people, institutions, whether it's school or church or these different things. The messaging as adults, we're all over the place. We're not still long enough to even pay attention to what are we actually taking on and what's driving us. The first step in this whole thing is acknowledging that we've got some things that are baked in at a pretty deep level and going to them. I know that based on the work that's being done, it's a certainty. Neuroplasticity, which is the rewiring of the brain, is not only possible, it's plausible, and it's happening if you're willing to be conscious enough to say, all right, time to rewire. You can rewire your thinking. It's not something where we go, oh, I mean, we know now that our brain is not stuck. Just because you have a brain that does X doesn't mean you can't change it to do Y. It is an option. You're not stuck unless you want to be stuck, but it's a choice.
Ooh, so good. So good. So tell me a little bit more about money mindset, because it sounds like you're in the financial world, you work with businesses, but yet you probably see people, just like you said, as soon as they get the money, they leave it because their core belief is that money is bad. Or tell me a little bit about how we would change or alter or grow in this money mindset.
Well, these belief systems that we have around being poor or broke or lacking, I have people that come to me and they say, I need help with my money. And I say, okay, great. What does that look like? And they say, well, here's the problem. I don't make enough money. And I say, okay, well, tell me about that. I make $400,000 or $500,000 and I've got $5 million in the bank. I'm actually talking about a particular client I worked with. And I said, what's the problem? I need to make more money. That was their solution to somebody else's problem. Their reality needed to be altered. They needed to understand what their resources actually represented. They didn't think that there was any freedom there, and they were actually addicted. It was sort of a strange thing. They were addicted to the income, not understanding that they had already created an opening. And so some of this stuff is just it's reframing how we're looking at things. The money mindset is just understanding you and I can look at the same thing and have a completely different experience. So asking a question, what is this? And then what is it really? And what could it be? All those type of things really kind of twist us around our work that we're doing, the jobs, the assets that we have. I mean, my friend Chris Martinson, who does a lot of prosperity work and talks about your capital. And this is not just cash capital or assets. He talks about your social capital. Your social capital of your network, the people that are around you, is incredibly important for you to be conscious of. I call it the Bucky Five in the book. It's that those things are going to influence you, and by osmosis, where you absorb it. People's belief systems, if you look at the 5 people around you, you're going to be the average of their health, their wealth, their mindset, their values, everything. Just, do a survey. Think about the people that you're around and how much money they're making. You're about the average of that. Think about their level of wealth, their abundance mindset, how much they travel. So if you want to change things, the easiest, fastest way after you ask what is true is to shift your environment, because you'll start becoming the same thing. If you don't want to be unhealthy, leave Nebraska, move to the coast of California. I mean, just go places where everybody's healthy, because you're going to naturally want to be a part of it. It's a tribal instinct. We don't want to be the outcast because the lion will eat us. It's baked into our system. So being a part of the tribe is safer, and you'll tend to become more like that tribe.
Yeah, I love that. When you think of money mindset, a lot of times, again, that's just deep-seated beliefs that can be changed, and we get to decide our view on money. And like you said, money isn't good or bad or have an emotional attachment. It is just a way of living. And a lot of times I kind of relate it to like a report card a little bit. Like the more value I add, the more I expect to get back. And so when it really isn't about numbers, or it's really about adding value and doing what you're passionate about. And I feel like things will grow.
That's what you're saying is incredibly important about the passion. There's a trifecta, and it's called the passion, talent, market triangle. Meaning you can have a passion, and if you don't tap it, you're never really going to feel right. You're always going to feel like no matter how much money you have, like you're not fulfilled. It's also helpful to have a talent around your passion. If you're not talented, but you go out there and you're like, I'm really passionate about this, I'm just an idiot, I can't actually do it. Well, you got to have the talent. You also need to have a marketplace, and not everything you do is going to be a Steve Jobs moment. Like you're not going to just say, hey, this is a great thing and everybody's going to care. Sometimes they don't care. You got to make sure the market actually wants what you're doing. And here's the big thing about money. It's a side effect. When you do things, if you're chasing money, you're literally arguing with the universe. If you're chasing your purpose and if you're doing the thing that the universe wants, the money is a side effect that operates at 90 degrees. And I mean, if you want to really dig into this, go to Buckminster Fuller, and smartest guy of the 20th century, and unbelievable work on the money mindset and the abundance and what our job as human beings is. It's not human doings chasing money, but we've been convinced that that's the job. Well, that's somebody else's role for us, but that's not our role for ourselves to be authentic.
I'm definitely looking that up. And it's cool what you said, because we've been at the top of our company for a decade, and people will say, how I don't know what I would do if I have that much money. And and for me, it's never been about the number. It's been about me growing personally and pushing through my own glass ceiling and adding value and helping as many people as I can. And the money always just came. So I began to trust that. I began to trust that if I'm living in my purpose, I'm doing what I'm passionate about, I'm helping people get better, everything will line up. And so I agree, passion, talent, and market. And when you're focused on that, again, like you're not focused on the number necessarily, you're focused on doing well and serving, and the money comes in. It sounds like that's a transition that you made as well, because at first you were like, money, doing all this. And then when you went through your own transformation, it became more about being in alignment with your passion, and the money came back.
Well, I was a money bee. I mean, I thought that was my job, to go get the money. And so that's what I did. And when I transitioned, it was a similar thing that we see in multi-level marketing and the network marketing world, where if you focus on going and figuring out how to slam people and push your product on the wrong person that you're not serving, you're going to get frustrated, and you're going to spend months or years, and you're going to say this doesn't work. If you go in with the intention of serving people, and that comes in two parts: one, sharing what your system does, and two, inspiring others to be a part of your team. I love these morons out there that say, oh, network marketing is a scam. And I'm just like, why is it a scam? And they say, well, because you're just recruiting people. I'm like, you see that as an average idiot, that instead of somebody that understands how you grow wealth. You grow wealth by inspiring and serving more people. And that's what network marketing is so awesome at, because you serve other people, and in the process, you're growing. And people miss that piece because they're arguing based on somebody else's nonsense belief systems that they've taken on, and they're not actually thinking. But when you're serving, you're inspiring, and that's what your focus is. Oh my gosh, the amount of wealth that you can create in those spaces is epic. That's the shift in mindset. It's the service. It's the impact. My focus is on freeing 1 million people from financial bondage. That's a massive service focus for the rest of my life. And it has nothing to do with me saying, okay, can I make more money? I monitor what I make. I monitor the money. The money is a gauge on the impact, because the universe keeps that flow going, and we have to keep tabs on it. Otherwise, we're reckless and irresponsible. I mean, that's just it's part of the system. Money is part of the exchange. It gives us feedback. So
yeah, I can hear your passion when you have that shift in mindset. Again, instead of the money being in the forefront, it's the mission in the forefront. And that's the fire in your belly. That gets you up in the morning. You're excited to work towards your goal, and you trust that the money is going to be there. And of course, you look, and you probably have Excel spreadsheets and all of those types of things. We're not putting our head in the sand, but your focus is different. And when it's a heart mission like that, like, oh my gosh, watch out. Nothing can stop you.
It's literally impossible to stop that type of focus. It's when I was involved in the last network marketing company that I was in, it was really fascinating. I was going out, and I went from 0 to 4,000 people in my organization, and had the 6-figure residual that had been built. And I was excited. And even though that company transitioned and didn't end up working out down the road, what was fascinating is how much I evolved, and the work that I was able to do and the connections with people, it changed me. And that was what I got out of that I was able to change and evolve and become better, so that the work I'm doing now is better. It was part of that process. If I'd said, oh no, that's stupid, it's a scam, I would have lost the entire process of the growth. And the growth is where the juice is.
Mm-hmm. People ask me all the time, like, what is it that I do? Tell me the how. Tell me the how. What do I say? What do I do? And I often say, like, that's the wrong question, because it's really about how, like you said, how I be, like, who do I be? Because I could say the same thing and have a completely different heart behind it. And one will work and one will inspire and one won't. So the who I be is a huge piece of the process. And I think that when people really start to understand that, then it connects their head to their heart and amazing things happen.
That's exactly right. People are craving. They're craving inspiration. They're craving because we're tiptoeing safely to death's door. Like, that's how society is structured right now. And it's really scary. I just got back from Africa recently, and I was over there walking with the gorillas in Rwanda, and it was amazing. I'm sharing this with people, and they go, "Oh my gosh, I want to do that." Well, maybe because I went out there and got on a 35-hour flight, and I went and did this, and I've got video, and I'm watching the silverback that almost runs over us, literally walking through us. Maybe that will inspire somebody. And every one of us has the ability to go do things, to actually take action and inspire other people. And it brings us to life, instead of just this tiptoeing activity that most of us do for decades, if not our entire lives, other than when we were about 5. So that's part of the process for all of us. Find those things that are exciting. And you know what? Accidentally, you're going to inspire other people, and it's going to make the entire process of life that much better for you.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Okay. So I've got a few more questions for you. One of them is about this wealth building that you've talked about. What are the green and red arrows of wealth?
It's funny that so much of what we teach is based on experience of working with people and going out there and stumbling around. And you can always tell people that are academics, because they regurgitate. When you ask them a question, they have no idea how to respond, because it wasn't in the book that they memorized, and they're spewing back out. Can we say college? So I was with a client one day, and I said, okay, so you wanted help with your money, your wealth and everything. Tell me about your situation. And they said, well, we're tired of sitting there looking at the TV every day at the end of the day and watching the report on the market. We're tired of seeing this thing where they say, today the Dow is up 14 points, or today it was down, and there's a green arrow that says the market's up and the red arrow that was down. And they said, we feel like our wealth is up when it's green, and our wealth is down, and we feel excited and scared. And then if it's up, we feel like tomorrow it might be down. And these arrows are making us crazy, this roller coaster. And I said, so what do you want to do? And they said, we want to get off the dang coaster. And I said, okay. So 6 months later, we're in Europe, and we're talking about the markets. I said, did you all see that the Dow dropped 500 points? They go, no, don't really care. And I said, oh, you don't really care about the arrows anymore. They're like, nah, doesn't matter. They had shifted. They got off the roller coaster, because the roller coaster is the default for most people. They go, I'm supposed to be on this roller coaster, and that's how you create wealth and retirement. And it's not. But you've been pitched this thing so many times, it seems normal. So that's a big part of understanding, how are you being influenced by your money? Like, if your money is represented by these arrows, it may be hell on earth for you to experience your money on a daily basis.
And you said so really it's getting off the roller coaster, and instead of, again, like riding it, letting life happen to us, putting the control back into our hands.
That's it. It's a choice. So when I mentioned the values that drive my life, self-responsibility is number one. It means I own everything in my life. If there's a hurricane, I own it. I own my experience of it. I didn't cause a hurricane. I'm not going to say, I'm not that good, but but I can say that here's my experience. If there's a tragedy like in Orlando years ago when people were killed, I can't own that, but I can own my experience of it and how I'm processing it. So the further we go down the path into self-responsibility, the more control we have. I hear people blaming and justifying and being a victim, and I go, ugh, it's like toxic waste. They're spewing all over the place. So if that's you, stop. For the love of God, stop. It's hurting everybody, including you. You've got to take responsibility. It changes everything.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. It does. It does. Okay. So you said a word that resonates with me. You said the word retirement. So tell me your views about retirement.
Retirement is a death sentence. It's truly the worst possible thing you can be thinking about. Retirement is an idea that was really made up in the early 20th century, and it has to do with retiring animals. It's basically going and shooting an animal that's too old in the back, or taking a piece of industrial equipment and going, you throw it out because you're retiring it, and it's not meant to be for people, but people adopted this thing and they said, okay, at some point we're too old or too slow. That's an industrial age idea because we were basically robots. Here's the thing though. There's two. One, when you're 50, 60 years old, that's where you have all these decades of wisdom that you should be sharing. I mean, that's where it's really exciting. And the other thing is people say, well, I'm going to retire and then I'm going to live, then I'm going to travel, then I'm going to whatever. Why are you waiting until you're older to actually live? And I hear people all the time that are saying, like my dad, right before he died, he looked at me and he said, man, I had so many things that I wanted to do. And I thought, whoa, that is regret. And he waited until he retired, never got to see the homeland where he's from Italy, never got to see it. And we are so often waiting for that day, the someday isle. Like, stop living on island someday and go do it today. Book that stuff, like get it done. Because you don't know when you're not going to have that choice anymore. And that's why retirement is literally the stupidest thing that you can be planning on.
It's funny. We were able to quit our jobs a few years into starting our business. Let's see, how old was I? 28, 29, we quit our jobs and we've been full-time with our business ever since. And so when we meet with people now, financial advisors or things, people like accountants and financial or, will people are always like, so how much money do you want when you retire? And I think, what? Retire? Like, we're doing what we want. Like, I can't imagine us just saying, oh, we're done now. So it's an interesting space because I know my dad lived in his job for 30 years and then had to get a book from the library that said 101 hobbies because when he retired, he didn't know what else to do. And it creates a different world for yourself when you're living in that way. But you also said one other word that I definitely want to make sure we touch on. And because your dad felt it, I know that so many of our listeners have probably experienced this as well. Regret. And you reject regret, which is a really strong way of saying like, this doesn't happen in my home. So tell me about regret for you.
As a kid, I remember hearing, why didn't you do this? Or you should have done this. And I'm like, great. So now I think about it. And I heard Tony Robbins say this years ago, but then you're going to shit all over yourself. That's basically going to be your lifestyle. And so I think, well, I can't go back in time and fix anything. I can simply act now. Why would I spend my time, my mental energy in the past? And regret is pointless. So until you're at the end and you go, oh man, I can't fix this. So the thinking is that either you're going to have the pain of discipline or the pain of regret. Regret is 1,000 times heavier. And discipline is what most people don't want to do because they don't want to pay the price because it's hard. And I'm like, yeah, well, wait until you run into regret. Regret is going to be hell on earth. It's going to be the worst experience for you and anybody that's around you because your soul is dead. And here's the problem. It's tied into retirement. The average male is dead in 1 to 3 years after retiring in the United States.
Like really dead.
That is like they're dead. Like their coffin, they're checked
Funeral,
out.
All of it.
Yeah. Because they're not engaging. They're not part of things. And the universe says, hey, if you're not participating, you're not creating, you're taking up space and you're consuming resources. We're done. You're out of here. So that's part of this whole idea that you've got to shift away from this. I'm going to do these things that I have to do that I don't like doing. It's all about the money, and then I'll live a certain lifestyle. You got to shift away from that, and you really have to start living on purpose. So that if somebody said, "Okay, in the last year, how was it?" You go, "I gave it all. It was amazing." So if you get hit by a car tomorrow, then it doesn't mean it's all fun. I mean, I used to think Aristotle was right, that the purpose of life was happiness. Aristotle was an idiot. I mean, he was smart, but that thing was the wrong thing, because sometimes it's not fun, the process you're going through. It's just part of the process, and it's painful and it hurts. And it is part of you being you and being on your path. And so we have to understand that it's not all about hedonistic tendencies. I mean, for me, it was 15 years ago. It was like more consumption, more eating, more whatever. And there was no fulfillment. There was a lot of success, at least externally. And it's a terrible path.
I know a lot of rich people who are miserable, and I'd rather be rich and joyful.
Well, there's a choice. I think sometimes you're speaking to money beliefs. There's a lot of people that say I'd rather be happy than rich because all I see is miserable rich people, and there are miserable rich people. I've been miserable and rich, and I've been miserable and poor. I also have been rich and happy. There's all these different combinations. It's a freaking choice. Yeah. So if you think it's either happy or rich, you're going to go for happy because you're going to say, I don't want to be miserable. That hurts. So you've got to understand what your words are doing. I always love listening to people, and I'll often ask somebody to tell me their story. When I first start, they say, I want help with my money. And I say, great, tell me your story. And I just listen to their words. And I see how much victim and blame and struggle and pain and regret and fear is baked into what they're sharing. With the work that you've done in the past with therapy and things, you can hear people's belief systems with the words that they use on something that they don't think has anything to do with their belief systems, but it's all baked in.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So regret is when you do something that's against your values or you missed it. It really comes down to forgiveness. Forgiving yourself and living in the present rather than in the past.
The present is where all the power is. I mean, it's truly, you can't live in the past and you can't live in the future. I mean, you literally only can be here. So the question is, how are you going to be here? And regret is that pain of thinking about what could have been. And then there's this anxiety about the future, but you can't be in either one of them. Mm-hmm. So it's really kind of a waste of energy until it becomes the only thing. And then it just becomes overwhelming. So it's a choice about how you set yourself up. Do you want to set yourself up so that there's at the end or whenever you're always on that path? Because I really think that people are there's a chapter in the book called Success versus Fulfillment. And we're trained for these success moments that it's about making that check, making that thing happen, having the promotion, whatever that thing is, winning the game. It's like if you ask people, okay, what was the success moment in 2004? What was the success moment in 2017? They don't even know. It's not about the success. It's about the deep fulfillment of the path. And that's why my focus is on mastery when I do things. It's not about on hitting a certain target as much as it is the mastery, because the mastery is that process. And that's where the fulfillment is. That's what we're craving. If the success is what everybody tells us we should do, because it's an outward thing we see on Facebook, it's in everybody's feed, success moment. Yeah. And then you live your life based on that. And it's a trap.
I love that. Going for fulfillment instead. Fulfillment, deep fulfillment. And you do that through mastery, through doing it long enough, for being invested long enough. I was a camp counselor for several summers, and I felt a deep fulfillment working with the kids because you're like all in. You're not half in, you're not a toe in, you're not kind of hanging out. You're like fully immersed. And I feel like those are the times where I feel the most fulfilled.
Yeah. And it's a good question about everybody. What are we all in on? If we're partially in, it's like, can you imagine being partially in the middle of sex? Like either you're in or you're not. It's like you're in this space or not. And if you're like, well, I'm going to have sex with my partner, really, that's going to be inspiring. They're going to be into you. Like, give me a break. You got to be all in. Like, go for it. Right? I mean, I think hopefully most people can relate to that. But partially committed? Embarrassing.
Oh, my face is bright red right now. Okay, so I've got a psychology moment. You said regret. We're going to just reject regret. It's not allowed in our space anymore because we're going to stay in the moment and ask ourselves what is true. And when you ask yourself what is true right now, that gives you the freedom to say, okay, well, what do I want? What do I want? And what do I want my future to look like? What do I want right now? And how can I, with the situation that I'm in, go and get that?
And there's kind of a follow-on to that if you ask, what is the problem? Do I have a problem right now? And if you tie that into the truth and you're really honest, most of us don't have a problem in the moment. We have a projected problem into the future, but there is no problem right now. As we sit, like I'm sitting here and I might have concerns about the future. I don't have any problems right now. And most of us don't. Most of our problems are events that we've made up in our head for the future that are never going to happen anyway. So what is the real problem? What is the truth about the real problem? Is it really, do we have any problems? And it's really funny. Most of us don't really have any problems.
Yeah, we really, if we take that mile high view and are like, take a step back, we we really have a lot to be grateful for. And a lot of times when those emotions come over, we don't see life in that way, but you can. I love that. Okay. So what is true? What is the problem? And then what do I want?
Yeah. And then the question is, okay, now I'm clear on these things. What do I do next? And this is where getting other people that can help you, it's like they're going to give you the bridge question to what could you do? What might be something you could do today? And you're like, oh, well, this or that. And then you pick something. And it doesn't have to be right, because it is right. Whatever you do doesn't, like, people think that there's winners and losers, or like you're going to make a right or a wrong decision. No, there's winners and learners. Like you either win the decision because it's the right one, or you learn something from it and you shift. But we're trained to if we make a mistake. I always like to say this, that in elementary school, high school, college, if you get 50% of your stuff wrong, you're a failure. I mean, you get a big F. In the real world, if you make 50% of anything right, you're a billionaire. Like, that is, the real world has nothing to do with all these belief systems that are baked in about making mistakes. I mean, if I had to do it again, I would go back and say, okay, Damion, young Damion, go make more mistakes faster, 10x your mistakes. And I wouldn't have hesitated about the judgment that I was feeling from other people about screwing up. I would have probably asked out a girl in high school instead of just sitting there and watching, because I was afraid somebody would laugh at me. And so we get so wound up about what people are thinking. Nobody cares. They're thinking about themselves. Nobody's paying attention to us. I mean, really, truly, they're obsessed with their own stuff, or Kim Kardashian. It's not us.
10x your mistakes, really, because that's how you get into action faster, is by not necessarily worrying about if it's right or wrong. You learn as you go. And because of that, you make progress, whether you messed up along the way or not.
And that's the key, that the progress, it's not about perfection, it's about progression. And you progress by being in activity, being in action. One of the funniest things about being in action and really moving, you don't have the mental space to be thinking about the mistakes. You're too busy in motion. And it's funny because you're like, wait, what are you worried about? I'm too busy over here actually doing it. And people are like, well, what if you, like, I don't know. I don't have time to be thinking about that right now.
Yeah, mic drop. So true. So, okay, I've got a question about what you're doing now. You are currently leading 3 global companies. Tell me about your current companies.
There's now 2. One of them was just sold. The primary one, so there's a digital media, and then there's a retirement space. The retirement space is really about rewiring people's responsibility and their options for retirement. And I wrote a book on that called the QRP book. And so if you want to understand how I see retirement and really the best tool in the world for retirement, for the idea, it's really just, when I say retirement vehicle, it's the government's version of retirement. So it just allows you to do a lot of things investing wise without paying taxes. So that's one thing. And the other company is about digital financial literacy. And they're both tied in together. It's about the financial bondage and breaking that for people and freeing people from it. So the other work is about the process that I do with people, where I mentor them, and I'm doing this digitally because I cannot touch enough people one-on-one. And so I asked myself the question, how am I going to free 1 million people? And it was like, oh, dude, you live in the age of the internet. I mean, come on, digitize this, teach people that way, and you can touch the whole planet, and you can push the price down to 0 so that ultimately it's available to everybody. And it's a bigger abundance-minded thinking versus how am I going to squeeze $25,000 from each person I touch? Like, I think that's a very limited, very selfish perspective. And so that's the other company is about freeing people that say, I want to be free, and giving them the tools to go make it happen.
How do we find you for those 2 resources?
DamionLupo.com is the place where I digitally live. Yeah, it's
all right.
Go to.
DamionLupo.com. All of the information will be in the show notes and description box below. But 2 last questions for you, Damion. You are somebody who's on a path of growth. I feel like you are somebody who doesn't do well with being bored. You're like, all right, what's next? How can I help? What's going on? Like, you're always kind of looking for the next thing, or your eyes are open in a sense. Your eyes are open and you're aware of what's going on, and you're excited to be all in with it. I want to know, what is one thing you do every day that keeps you in that connection, so you are fully 100% available wherever you are?
The most consistent thing I do every day is my 10-year journal. It's a journal that has 10 years worth of entries in one book. So I can see 10 years on one page of August first. And so I'm in there. And what's fascinating is I can see the evolution. I can see how when my instincts kicked in on April 3rd, I can see that when I didn't do anything until July, I already knew in April, and I can see the process, and it's very easy to understand it. So I do that every day on purpose because I don't want to be living the same year over and over like it's freaking Groundhog Day. And that's probably the most consistent thing I do, other than, I generally sleep every day. I did do the normal human things. The journaling, and it's only 4 lines. It's very, very simple. So you've got to really consolidate your life, at least your experience, into these lines. But I think that's one of the coolest things I've ever used, and I've been using it for years.
That's actually the second time this week I've heard of that. We were at a leadership retreat at Willow Creek Leadership Summit, and Craig Groeschel was the speaker there, and he talked about that journal too. It seems really, really cool because sometimes we don't see the progress that we've made until we look back and go, wow, I can see these questions that I had, or these prayers that I had, or I see how the house showed up right when I needed to. And it's really cool to look back and kind of see how things line up.
Yeah. It's also fun to laugh at yourself and go, what was I waiting for? Like, what am I doing? And then you see the same thing, the same mistake you make over, and you're like, how many times? Apparently I needed it 7 times. That was how many mistake experiences I needed to understand this one. Or
like, why was I freaking out about that? It was no big deal.
Also true. It doesn't matter. Most of these things that we're concerned about truly don't matter. And it's, we decide they matter, but it's back to a choice.
Awesome. All right. So what's the next thing for you? What is your next goal? What are you working on now?
Your comment a little while ago about how I'm always seeing the next thing, and I see the next things, and because I'm so anchored in this focus on that vision for creating these, like I've got 2 books that one's coming out this fall and one comes out in 2019. And I'm very focused on those. And when people say, hey, you want to be at this thing or that thing? And I say, thank you very much. No, thank you. It's because I understand these big projects and they pull me. It's like gravitational force that pulls me. And good luck on getting me knocked out of that gravitational force, because these things have such a big mass. The vision is the mass. And it's like an Einsteinian equation that if you have enough mass, because the thing matters enough, it will pull you, and nothing is going to be able to stop it because it's a force of the universe. So that's what keeps pulling me, and then creating. It's just creating. When I created Yokido, which how did you pronounce it? Yokido or something? Yeah,
Yokido. Okay, got it.
So when I did that, I had to. I was like, I was pregnant with this thing. I mean, I was gestating for a while, going, I got to get this out of me. What is this? And it was the thing. It was my essence. And so that's what Yokido became. It was the blend of the martial arts and that I've been training with for 20 years. And it was really a way for people to understand how to be in relationship with other people without conflict. And that changes everything, because all of a sudden you're able to be still and see and connect. And that's really what we want more than anything, that connection without the conflict.
Mm-hmm. Oh my goodness. Well, you have a lot of resources that I'm super interested in, and I know our listeners are too. So check out DamionLupo.com. You guys check out all of his information, and we'll definitely be on the lookout for your next few books as well. And it's just been a pleasure to get to know you. I'm excited to continue to connect. And thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and experience with us today.
Well, I appreciate you having me here, and I hope everybody learned a little, had some fun, and look forward to seeing you again soon.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for hanging out with us today. I want to hear your aha moment from today's amazing episode. If you could leave a review at whatever podcast player you choose to listen from, Apple Podcast, Castbox, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you're listening from, leave a review and share with us your favorite part of today's episode. Thanks for hanging out, and remember to dream big.